So in this video, we are going to revisit that pseudocode that we wrote in lesson 2. Remember the pseudocode where you went to dinner with 4 friends and they gave you the bill, and then you had to calculate how much tip and then divide up the amount so everyone would know what to pay. Well, that was a very great algorithm that we developed to give to another person. Another person could follow those steps and figure out how to divide the bill evenly. But the computer needs a little bit more information. So a computer needs to know what the inputs are going to be, what the outputs are going to be, all of the calculations, and a computer needs to create variables to store the information that's calculated along the way. So when you are developing pseudocode for a program like this program, you first want to identify all of the variables that we will need. So we know we're going to need a variable for bill, and then for the tip, and then for the total, and then another variable to hold how much each person will pay. So to start off, let's go ahead and we can create a variable for the bill. And usually, when we get a little further along, we'll start identifying the data types of these variables. And so I can say something like create a variable bill, or I could say create float bill. And so this is telling me in my pseudocode to remember that this variable will hold decimal values, because money always has decimal values with it. And then I'm going to create another float for the tip, and then I'm going to create another float for the total, and then I'll create another float for the per person, what each person owes. Okay, and so the first thing I want to do is I want to ask the restaurant what my bill is. So I'm going to, and we call that prompting in computer science. So I'm going to prompt for the bill. And then I'm going to, whatever they give me back, that's the input, right? So I'm going to input the bill. So I'm going to ask them, please give me my bill. And then they're going to give me the bill, and I'm going to input it into this variable bill. And then I'm ready to calculate the tip. So I'm going to set the tip to the bill times 20%, right? That's what we're going to give a 20% tip. And then now that we have the bill and we have the tip, then I can create the total. So I'm going to set the total to the bill plus the tip. Okay, so I'm going to set the total to the bill plus the tip. And now that I have the grand total, I'm ready to calculate the per person total. So I'll set the per person to the total divided by 4. And we can get pretty clever. Maybe you don't go out to dinner with just 4 people. Maybe you go out to dinner with 10 people. And so we can make this a little bit more generic later on. And then we're going to print, let's see, should we print the total bill and then what each person owes? Or we could print the total, the tip, probably would do the bill first, the tip, the total, and the per person. Okay, and that's our entire algorithm. So it looks a little bit more involved than just writing out instructions for another person to follow, right? We have to explicitly state what variables we need to create for this program so that the computer can hold that information for us. So now we're ready to write our program. So I'm going to comment that out. And then I'm just going to start at the top and write each of these statements into Python. And you've learned the syntax to do each of these things throughout this unit. So the first thing is to create a variable bill. And remember, we're always going to create a function called main, and then we will call main at the very end. So the first thing I'm going to do is create bill, and I'll assign it to 0.0. And I'm just going to put 0.0 in there so I can remember that this will be a decimal value. And then I'll do the same for tip, and the same for total. It's supposed to be a 0. And the same for per person. And then I want to prompt for the bill and input the bill. And in Python, we do this all in one step. So I'm going to set bill to float input enter bill, and I can put a $sign right there. So how this works is the input function asks the user for input, and this is what will be displayed on this screen. So enter bill will be displayed on this screen, and then when the user types in the amount of the bill, that is saved as a string, and you can't do math on strings. So that's why we have to change that input to a number, and the kind of number that we're changing it to is a float, a number with decimals. And then we'll put that number with decimals into the bill variable. And then the next thing we want to do is set the tip to bill times 20%. So I set my tip to bill times 0.20. And then I'm going to set the total to the bill plus the tip. And then I'll set the per person to total divided by 4. And notice, right, I'm just going down each of my pseudocode statements and I'm just changing them into the Python language. I could give this pseudocode to a Java programmer or a C++ programmer, and they could change it into that language as well. So pseudocode is just a generic step-by-step algorithm, and then you will just change it into the language that you're writing in. And then the last thing we want to do is print the bill, the tip, total, and the per person. So I'm going to say print let's see, we'll just say amount. And then we can use this function that you learned earlier to format decimals, and I want to format the bill to 2 decimals, right? This is one of those things that sometimes I even forget and I have to look up, I have to Google it. So if you have a sticky note, I would just write this down. This is the syntax that you have to use to format money to 2 decimal places. And then I just stick that sticky note right above your computer on the wall. And then every time you need to format money, you can just look up and there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and print, let's see, the tip. Tip. Oh, I can probably say like 20% tip, right? Make it a little fancy. And then format the tip, 2.2f. And then print the total. So I think I'll do a little line like this. And then I'll print, whoops. Gads. There we go. Print the total bill. And then format total 0.2f, right? And then I'm going to line this up just so it looks nicer when it prints out. And then I'm going to print each person, please pay. And then an amount format per person, 2.2F. Okay, and then I think I think I'll just say total with a colon, and then I'll line that up, and then I'm going to put a new line in here using that special sequence. Look how it even turned to a different color, pink, right? So this means something special when it's inside of a string, and it means to go to the new line. So I'm going to go ahead and run that, and I'll enter my bill of $100, and it says the amount is $100, the tip is $20, the total's $120. Each person please pay $30. So that's our program, and I could probably fix up some of the formatting so it looks a little nicer, and then probably put a welcome message and a goodbye message. So let's see how that looks. So I added this new line right before it prints amount, so it should add a new line. $100 there. See the little new line that added right there? So everything kind of lines up a little bit nicer, except for this is now $100. And this is called the user experience, right? This is the area that your user will be looking at. And you want to make sure that it's neat and tidy and that everything is spaced out appropriately. Because if you were paying money for this program, you would want it to look professional and neat. So make sure when you're coding that your user experience looks professional and neat.